What's going on, everyone? Mr. Octagonal here. Now, today, we have my official draft board for the upcoming 2019 draft, which is just starting in a couple of days. You guys all know I'm super excited for it. I'm going to have another mock on first day. It's just going to be one round. I already have a 7-round one that I worked on this past week, so I just want to ease myself for the final one, but I do want to upload one on the day of the festivities. So before we talk about my big board, I just want to talk about quickly the Frank Clark deal. He's going to Kansas City for the 29th overall pick as well as a 2020 second, and then the two teams are swapping third-round picks. I think Clark is very underrated, and I don't think 5 years, $105 million is an awful contract for him. Like, Trey Flowers got 5 years, $90 million. I think Frank Clark is better than Trey Flowers, so I don't think this is an awful deal. The Chiefs are giving up a lot for one player, and I think the Seahawks are getting good value, but at the same time, probably none of those picks are going to be anything near as good as Frank Clark, and I think this is a really solid deal for both sides. Yeah, the value might be a little bit questionable for Kansas City. However, they're trying to win the Super Bowl now, so I think they're getting one of the best pass rushers in the league. Him and Chris Jones are going to be a really nice tandem. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it. We're going to have the top 10 players from each position, being quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive tackle, edge rusher, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. And then we're going to have my top 50 overall players in this draft. So I guess that's what to expect with this video. Starting at the quarterback position, my number one guy is Kyler Murray from Oklahoma. This was definitely not an easy choice. I think you could theoretically put any of those three guys at the top at 1, 2, and 3. However, I do have Kyler here simply because I think he can change a franchise. I think he has the potential to do that. He's not like anyone we've ever seen, and I think his explosiveness, along with his arm talent, I think he has incredibly great upside. And while players like Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock are more polished, I think Kyler Murray makes sense for Arizona, who, for example, Josh Rosen, I don't think he's going to lead them to a Super Bowl in the near future. I don't know if Dwayne Haskins and Drew Lock have as much potential as Kyler Murray to do that, so that's why Kyler is at 1. Number 2, Dwayne Haskins. I think he's the best pure passer in this draft. However, I just don't see the upside that Kyler has. Dwayne Haskins is not very mobile outside of the pocket, and that's definitely his big weakness. Number 3 is Drew Lock from Missouri. He's been a 4-year starter, and I think he has a somewhat similar skill set to Dwayne Haskins. He's had some bad games here and there, but he definitely does not lack the experience. But I don't think he has the upside that Kyler has, and maybe not even that Dwayne Haskins has. Number 4, Tyree Jackson from Buffalo. I'm putting him ahead of Daniel Jones. I think I think Tyree Jackson has more potential. He reminds me a lot of Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming. Not the biggest school, but both of them have huge frames. Both of them are solid athletes. Both of them have incredible arms, but are not the most accurate. Solid runners, and I really like Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming, so this shouldn't really be a surprise if you knew that. Number 5 is Daniel Jones, quarterback from Duke, as I just don't see the potential in Jones that other people do. He has a solid arm, pretty mobile. I think he's just too average, I feel like, and I think the other guys all have more upside. I think 6 through 10, I think there's a big drop-off after Daniel Jones. I think you could put any of these bottom 5 guys in any order, but my number 6 is Will Grier. I have been very critical of Will Grier. I think he has a wonky throwing motion. He has meh accuracy, a meh arm, but he's still somewhat mobile, and he still has a solid arm, so that's why he is ranked at number 6. 7 and 8, Jarrett Stidham and Clayton Thorson. I think those two are similar players. Lots of hype the past few seasons, and both of them have showed tremendous flashes, but they've also both been very inconsistent. Number 9 is Easton Stick from North Dakota State. I think he is quite underrated. He has solid mobility and has a solid arm, and I do like his potential. And then number 10, Ryan Finley, NC State. A lot of people are higher on him. I view him as someone who does not really have the potential to become a starting level quarterback. I think he will be a solid backup for a while, so maybe 10 was a little bit harsh. I think a team like Carolina or Philadelphia, who's not really looking for a new starter but could use depth, as both of those teams have injury-prone quarterbacks, I think Ryan Finley is someone who makes sense. Definitely does not have a great ceiling, not the youngest, but I do think he has a very solid role in this league. This is definitely a very weak running back class, especially at the top. And depth-wise, it's not as great as the past couple of years. In 2017, we saw guys like Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt picked on day 2, who have been very solid. And then in 2018, Nick Chubb, Kerryon Johnson, among some of the names picked on day 2, who have had really good rookie years. So I don't think we're going to have any great running backs in this class. I think Josh Jacobs definitely has the best chance to. Jacobs did not have the most production at Alabama, not quite as much carries as Damian Harris or Najee Harris, but Jacobs is a physical runner, solid athlete. I wouldn't say he's a great athlete, definitely not like the number 1 running back in last year's class, Saquon Barkley, far from in talent, which I think is sort of obvious. Jacobs does not quite have the mileage that some of these other running backs have, which is good, but at the same time, he might not have as much college experience, which could be a problem. Number 2, Justice Hill from Oklahoma State. He had a phenomenal combine, and I really like him as a change of pace back. Probably not someone who's going to get you 30 carries a game, but he's extremely athletic, and he had a really solid season with the Cowboys, and I think this is a little bit generous for Justice Hill, but I do think he is really talented. Number 3, one of my most debatable in this entire video, Rodney Anderson from Oklahoma. I know a lot of people probably don't have him in their top 10, but I have him at number 3. Obviously, the durability concerns are definitely there as he's dealt with numerous season-ending injuries, including a torn ACL, I believe, on the first game of the year against FAU. However, I think Anderson is extremely talented, debatably the most talented in this entire class. He had a really good season a year ago with Oklahoma when Baker Mayfield won the Heisman. Solid, powerful runner. He is a pretty solid athlete as well. Pretty fast, and I think all around he's a really good player other than the durability concerns. Damian Harris from Alabama, not as high on him as others. However, he is a solid physical runner, and I do think he will be pretty good at the next level. Number 5, Miles Sanders from Penn State. He had a really solid year replacing Saquon Barkley. Obviously, he did not have Barkley's production, but I do think he is an extremely talented player. He definitely was a winner during the Combine, and I really like his upside. Number 6, David Montgomery from Iowa State. Not as high as him as other people, as he didn't impress me during the Combine, and obviously Big 12 defenses aren't the greatest. However, he is a powerful runner, and I do think he is a talented player. Number 7, Darrell Henderson from Memphis. Definitely not the biggest. I would say sort of a poor man's Justice Hill in a way. Fast, athletic, but definitely not large in size. Number 8, Benny Snell from Kentucky. Solid, powerful runner, and I do like him as a receiver in the backfield. Obviously, not the most athletic, not the greatest of combines, but I do think he is somewhat underrated. He had a great year this year for the Wildcats. Number 9, Raquel Armstead from Temple, and I think he is a very underrated player. Obviously, not the household name, not the household school, but I do think he's been a really solid player for the Temple Owls, and I think he could be a very nice complementary running back. And then number 10, Bryce Love. Obviously, the injury concerns are there. He probably would have been a first or second round pick had he declared last season. I do think he has all the talent in the world, sort of like Rodney Anderson in a way, but the injury concerns will definitely hold his draft stock back. I had him going in the 7th round, I believe, to the Giants. I do expect him to be drafted, but probably not until day 3. Now on to wide receiver. The top of this class is not great at receiver, but it's extremely deep. A bunch of talented players who are going to be drafted on Friday in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. There are some really solid players left off this list. Riley Ridley, Preston Williams, Emmanuel Hall among some of them. But number 1, we have DK Metcalf from Ole Miss. I really like him. Obviously, there are 2 big concerns with him, the durability and the route running. He's a very raw route runner, and he's had numerous injury concerns throughout his career. However, he is a huge frame. He has Calvin Johnson-like athleticism for his size. And as a Lions fan, I love Calvin Johnson. He's my favorite athlete of all time. And I see some similarities between the two of them. Not saying DK Metcalf is the next Calvin Johnson, but I do see some similar traits athletically. Number 2 is going to be Metcalf's college teammate, A.J. Brown. I was tempted to put some of the other guys here, however, I am going to choose Brown. I think he is a very solid, safe pick in the late first, early second round. Maybe, probably the Indianapolis range. I could see a team like Indy or New England pulling the trigger on him. He's a really good route runner, and he's definitely been more productive than DK Metcalf throughout his career. He definitely does not have the upside that Metcalf has, and I do think N'Keal Harry is a very similar player to A.J. Brown. I just think Brown is a little bit more polished and a little bit better of an athlete, which is why I have Brown higher. Number 3 is not N'Keal Harry. Harry is number 4. Number 3 is Hakeem Butler from Iowa State. Sort of a poor man's DK Metcalf in a way. Big frame, very solid athlete, as he ran a 4.43 40, which isn't quite the 4.33 that Metcalf won, but still, I think Hakeem Butler is definitely someone who I think a team in the late first round should pull the trigger on. Number 4, N'Keal Harry. As I said, he's sort of similar to A.J. Brown in a way, and I think you could rank N'Keal Harry higher than A.J. Brown, and there's not much of a difference to me. Number 5, Marquise Hollywood Brown from Oklahoma. He can stretch the field. He's extremely fast, but there are some durability concerns, and he does not come in with the biggest frame. Number 6, one of the most underrated players in this draft class, in my opinion, Terry McLaurin from Ohio State. I like his frame. I like his athleticism, very fast, and I think he's a really talented player. I think he is early second-round talent, even though he's probably going to be picked in the third round. Number 7 is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside out of Stanford. Another one of those Mr. Reliable receivers, sort of like A.J. Brown, sort of like N'Keal Harry. I think you could put Deebo Samuel in that as well. Sort of slot-like receivers, very good route runners, really solid hands, but not a great ceiling. Number 8, Paris Campbell from Ohio State. Speed kills 4.31 40. And I've mentioned this before, I think teams can use him in a number of ways at wide receiver, in the backfield, on special teams. I've had the Browns getting him in round 2. A lot of Browns fans disagree, but I think he can be really solid for their offense. Sort of talked about Deebo Samuel, sort of a Mr. Reliable type player. And then number 10, Kelvin Harmon. Really solid frame. I do think he is a little bit overrated, but I do like his talent, and I think he'll be a really solid player. Now on to tight ends. I have loved Noah Fant throughout the pre-draft process, and it was hard not to put him at number 1. However, I am putting his Iowa teammate, T.J. Hawkinson, at number 1. And the only difference is Hawkinson is a much better blocker. I think they're both really good receivers. I think Noah Fant has more potential as a vertical threat. However, Hawkinson is a phenomenal blocker, whereas Fant isn't. That's the only reason why I have Hawkinson at number 1. Looking at Noah Fant, extremely athletic, really good during the combine, as I expected. Sort of like an Evan Engram type build. However, I do think he'll sort of flow into that tighter end role better, whereas Evan Engram's basically a wide receiver. Number 3, Irv Smith from Alabama. Talented receiver, talented blocker. I think it's those 3 and then a big drop-off. So at number 4, Caleb Wilson. Poor man, Noah Fant, and I think you can say the same about Jace Sternberg. Both of those 2 are very athletic, very solid receivers, but not great blocking-wise. Number 6, Kahale Warring from San Diego State. I think he's basically just a lot of upside. Shown flashes as a receiver, shown flashes as a blocker, but I don't think he's great, and I do think he is far from a finished product. Number 7, C.J. Conrad from Kentucky. I think he's a very talented player. Solid receiver, solid blocker, but he does not have a great ceiling. Number 8, Josh Oliver from San Jose State. He is a very solid receiver, decently athletic, but I think overall not a great blocker. And I think sort of like Noah Fant, Jace Sternberg, and Caleb Wilson, that's definitely his limitation. Number 9, Dawson Knox from Ole Miss. Sort of like Kahale Warring, Knox is far from a finished product. He's shown plenty of flashes at Ole Miss, but does have plenty of work to do. And then number 10, we have Caden Smith from Stanford. I think he's a talented receiver. I think he's an underrated receiver. Needs to work on his blocking, but he's not too bad. Definitely not a great athlete. Struggled during the combine. And I do think he has potential, but doesn't have a crazy ceiling. Now onto offensive line. This is a really good offensive line class. 6 of these guys I have going in the first round when it comes to talent. And then I have all 10 of these guys in my top 50. So, really big fan of the depth at O-line in this draft class. Starting with number 1, it was not easy. However, I am choosing Jawan Taylor, the offensive tackle from Florida. He's very athletic. He's an extremely good pass blocker, and the only reason why I chose him over someone like an Andre Dillard is that he's a more proven run blocker. Number 2, Jonah Williams. He can play tackle and he can play guard from Alabama. He has had lots of production with the Crimson Tide. Definitely one of the most productive offensive linemen in this class. You can put him at left tackle, right guard. There are a number of places you could put him at. Number 3, Andre Dillard, Washington State. He had a really good Senior Bowl, really good combine, and is the best pass blocker in this draft class, which is why I think a team that's going to be getting a new quarterback within the next few years or has a young quarterback who needs to develop sort of like the New York Giants in a way, who don't have their guy yet, I think at 17, that'll make a ton of sense. His only weaknesses is that we don't really know what he is as a run blocker. Washington State pretty much barely runs the ball. They really focus on throwing it. And I definitely think that has padded Luke Falk and Gardner Minishew's stats the past couple of seasons. And we have not seen him as a run blocker. Number 4, Cody Ford from Oklahoma, who's been very productive on the right side of the Sooners' offensive line. He can play guard and tackle. Solid athlete. I had him at number 1 during my last big board, which was probably a good 2 months ago. Obviously, things have changed. Number 5, Garrett Bradbury, center/guard from NC State. Solid production, but he definitely really rose his stock during the combine. Extremely athletic. Really like his versatility, and I definitely expect him to get picked in the late first round. Number 6, Dalton Risner, Kansas State. I think he can play tackle. I think he can play guard. I think he can even play a little bit of center. And his overall versatility, where he can play anywhere on the offensive line, is the main reason why I really like him. Number 7, Greg Little, tackle from Ole Miss. I think that Little definitely struggled during the combine. However, I do think the production is definitely there, and I think some team really looking for a tackle could slide him in the late first round. Number 8, I have Eric McCoy from Texas A&M, as he can play center as well as guard, sort of like the number 9 guy on my spot, which is Elgton Jenkins. McCoy, the only reason why I have him higher than Jenkins is the athletic traits. I think that Eric McCoy is definitely much more athletic than Elgton Jenkins, and that's really the only big difference between the two of them. And then at number 10, we have Chris Lindstrom from Boston College. I definitely think he is NFL ready. Don't think he has an amazing ceiling. However, he's had some experience with the Boston College Eagles, as he had a really solid senior season, solid during the Senior Bowl, and I definitely expect him to get picked in the second round, which is absolutely fair value. Now on to defensive tackle, and Ed Oliver's been my boy since day one. I've had him ranked as the number 1 player in this draft class. However, I am changing my mind. Quinnen Williams, I think, is the best defensive tackle in this class. What can't he do? He can rush the passer, he can stop the run, he can stuff blocks, he's a freakishly athletic player, and I think it's going to be hard for a team to pass him up early on. I think he has a chance to go number 1. Keyword is a chance. It probably will be Kyler Murray, but if not Kyler Murray, I would pick Quinnen Williams. Actually, I would probably pick Kyler Murray if I was the Cardinals, but other than him, my next option would be Quinnen Williams. He's just a very good all-around player of so much upside. And the only reason why Ed Oliver's not higher is just because he has a lot of work to do as a pass rusher. But other than that, obviously there have been the Aaron Donald comparisons. Donald's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He racked up 20.5 sacks a season ago. And I think Oliver absolutely has that potential. And I think it could go either way with these two. However, I think Quinnen wins by a hair. Number 3, Christian Wilkins from Clemson. Lots of production with the Tigers. As I don't think he's a crazy ceiling. However, I do think he will be a quality player in the NFL. And then number 4 is teammate Dexter Lawrence. Giant, 350 pounds. He is pretty athletic for his size. I don't think he fits today's NFL as well as like a Quinnen Williams or an Ed Oliver. And I think the comparisons are there to guys like Danny Shelton and Vita Vea, who were both somewhat high first-round picks. Both of them are solid, but neither of them are game changers, and that's definitely a big question mark about him. He's had injury concerns. He was not able to play in the college football playoff. However, the athletic upside is there. He was insane as a freshman, and his stock has sort of dipped a little bit since then, but he is really good. Number 5, Jerry Tillery from Notre Dame. Tillery had a great season, whether it was stopping the run, getting to the quarterback, pretty good combine. There are some character concerns with him, though. However, I do think he is a talented player and could be looked at in round 1. Number 6, Jeffrey Simmons from Mississippi State. One of the most interesting players in this entire draft class. He's debatably top 10 talent. I don't know if I'd say top 10, but he is a really good player. However, there are some concerns off of the field. He has had numerous instances, and he also tore his ACL not too much before the combine. He was not invited to the combine anyway, but still, he's coming off an ACL and probably won't be playing this season. However, the talent is there, and it's going to be hard for a team to pass him up. I think a team in the early second round could pull the trigger. Number 7, Draymond Jones from Ohio State. Really solid at getting to the quarterback. He can also stop the run as well. I've had him going in the mid to late second round, and I do think that's where he probably will end up. Number 8, Charles Omenihu from Texas. I expect him to go in that similar range, mid to late second, maybe early third. I like his versatility. I think he can play inside. I think he also has enough talent to play edge. Number 9, Isaiah Buggs from Alabama. I had him going in the 6th round in my 7th round mock draft, which, yeah, he'll probably be picked higher than that, likely a 3rd or 4th. His production was definitely missed during the national championship, which he didn't play, and the team wasn't the same, even though they had guys on their defensive line like Quinnen Williams, like Raekwon Davis, like, Christian Miller. And then number 10, Kalen Saunders from Western Illinois. Really good during the Senior Bowl, solid combine, and I think he is very underrated and could get a look on day 2. Now on to edge rushers, and I'm not going to lie, I was extremely tempted to put Josh Allen at number 1. However, my number 1 edge rusher is Nick Bosa from The Ohio State University. I think he is by far the highest floor in this draft class. I don't see a scenario where he turns into a bad player. I think he's the best pure pass rusher in this draft class, and there's not much to dislike about him. He did stop playing pretty much a quarter through the year to focus on the NFL draft. Can't say I love that decision, definitely focusing on himself rather than the team. And yeah, he wants to be a great NFL player, I get that. However, could he do something like this, maybe holding out for a contract extension in the NFL? Just something to look at. Number 2, Josh Allen from Kentucky. As I said, I was tempted to put him above Nick Bosa, but I just couldn't do it. Allen is a phenomenal pass rusher, really athletic. He's very versatile. He's solid in coverage, and I think overall he could be a really good player. Number 3, Rashawn Gary from Michigan. Now, there are reports that he does have a torn labrum in his shoulder, which could be very significant. He's either going to have to play through that this season and have surgery at the end of the year, or miss a decent chunk of the year. I was doing some research, and I saw that Shaq Lawson entered the NFL with that same injury. He had surgery in May and missed half of this season, and he has not been a great player with the Buffalo Bills. And a lot of people dislike Gary's tape. However, he's been double-teamed all year. You can't really blame him. And when he's not, he is an insane force in the middle of their defensive line or as an edge rusher. He's extremely athletic, and I'm a huge fan of his upside. I know a lot of people do dislike him. Same can be said for Montez Sweat. Everyone thinks he's just speed, speed, speed. And yeah, he's incredibly fast. 4.4, 140-yard dash. But he's not just speed. 11.5 sacks on the year. He had a really good Senior Bowl, and he's an all-around really solid athlete. He has a minor heart concern, however, sort of similar to what Mo Hurst had, and he ended up falling to the 5th round, and he was really good for Oakland. I don't think it's as serious, and I definitely do think he will still be picked in the 1st round, as he should. Him and Gary do not get enough credit for how talented they are. Number 5, Brian Burns from Florida State. he had a really solid combine and is pretty athletic. I think all around he's talented. He doesn't have an extremely high ceiling, but he also doesn't have a bad floor. And I think same can be said for Cleveland Ferrell at number 6. In most draft classes, Ferrell would be way higher, but obviously with the amount of edge talent at the top of this draft class, Ferrell has definitely improved throughout the year as a run stopper. Probably would have been a first-round pick in last year's draft. Same can be said for Christian Wilkins, but both of them decided to stay. I don't think their stocks really changed too much. Both of them are still going to be mid to late first-rounders. Number 7, Jalen Ferguson from Louisiana Tech. Production. This guy has been great for the Bulldogs. Most sacks in college football history. And while LA Tech is not the biggest school, I think just seeing how dominant he is at getting to the quarterback, I think he could be really good in this league. Number 8, Zach Allen from Boston College. Solid pass rusher, solid run stopper, high instincts, and I don't think he has a crazy ceiling, but he has a nice floor. Number 9, Chase Winovich from Michigan. Obviously, he has the crazy hair, or I should say the long hair, and as a fellow long hairer, I definitely might have bumped him up a spot, but I think he is very talented, sort of a poor man's Montez Sweat, 4.59 40-yard dash, and both him and Sweat do have small character concerns, but very, very small. And then number 10, Ja'Kai Polite, really good year this year at Florida, but that's all the positive things we can say about him, as he has not been great before this year, and then he struggled in the combine, struggled during his pro day, struggled in interviews. However, he had a phenomenal year against SEC offensive linemen, guys like Jonah Williams and Greg Little, who are both potentially first-round talents. Definitely Jonah Williams will be. And I do think he has a nice ceiling. Now on to linebackers, starting with my number 1 in the class, Devin White from LSU. I think the top 2 guys are blue-chip prospects, and then after that, it is pretty big drop-off. Devin White was recruited as a running back. He has insane athleticism, insane explosiveness for that defense, and sort of reminds me of Roquan Smith a little bit, who came out of college last year and had a really solid rookie year with the Bears. Can rush the passer, is solid in coverage, 3 down, sideline to sideline linebacker. Number 2, Devin Bush from Michigan. I think he is sort of a poor man's Devin White. I think the two are very similar. Obviously, the speed is there. Both those two are still somewhat raw, but I do think they both have really solid potential. I think both of them are also great leaders as well and don't have any character concerns. Number 3, Mac Wilson from Alabama. Really like him in coverage. Not as great as getting to the backfield as some of these other guys, but I do think he is really nice in coverage. Number 4, Voshon Joseph. He had a really solid year this year with the Gators. Can play inside, he can play outside, and I like his versatility. Number 5, Blake Cashman from Minnesota. He can get to the backfield with ease, whether it's rushing the quarterback, stopping the run, and I think he is a really talented player. And by the way, guys number 3 through 10, I think you could almost put any of them in any order, theoretically. Number 6, Jermaine Pratt from NC State. I like him athletically. I do think he has a lot of athletic upside. I think I had him falling to the 5th round in my 7th-round mock, which is a little bit harsh. Probably a 3rd-round prospect for me. Number 7, Joe Giles Harris from Duke. Sort of had a down season after a really good freshman and sophomore campaigns. He can sort of rush the passer, solid run stopper, pretty good in coverage as well. Number 8, Trey Lamar from Clemson. Really like him athletically. I think he's extremely raw, but he does have that upside, and I don't think he's going to be a great contributor right away. I had him falling in the late 7th of my 7th-round mock. That's also sort of harsh, probably more of a 3rd to 4th-round guy. Cameron Smith from USC, really good run stopper, and he has shown some signs in pass coverage. And then David Long, he's versatile. I think you could put him at a number of spots on the defense. I like him athletically, and I think, as I said, 3 through 10 could go in any order. If David Long is the 3rd best linebacker in this class, I wouldn't totally be shocked. Now on to cornerbacks. Number 1, Greedy Williams from LSU. Very tall, very lean cornerback. I like his ball skills, and I do think he's a pretty underrated all-around prospect. I think I had him in my top 10, not entirely sure, but I do think he should be in the bottom part of the top 10. While I don't expect him to be picked that early, I do think he has the talent to be that early. Number 2, Byron Murphy from Washington. He just seems like the type of player that I feel like we could get, even though it's sort of a reach. I really do like his instincts, though, and I do think he has nice potential. Definitely the type of player that Matt Patricia would love. Number 3, DeAndre Baker from Georgia. Not the biggest of frames like some of the other corners in this draft. Obviously, Greedy Williams, Lonnie Johnson, Juwan Williams. But Baker had an incredible year at Georgia, winning the Jim Thorpe Award. And while he's 5'11", there are plenty of tiny corners in the NFL, and I do think he will be really good. Number 4, Rocky Ya-Sin from Temple. Physical cornerback, pretty good in press coverage, and I do think he has nice upside. Could be a solid pick in the late first round. Number 5, Amani Oruwariye from Penn State. He is already 23, which is a little bit on the older side, but he's tall, lean, also another physical cornerback, and I do really like him. Number 6, Lonnie Johnson from Kentucky. He definitely has a phenomenal frame, and I think that height is super important for corners when you're covering tall receivers, like, of course, someone like a DK Metcalf. Same thing with Juwan Williams at number 8. Number 7, Trayvon Mullen from Clemson, really good during the college football playoff. That's definitely him playing at his best when the lights were shining the brightest. Sort of talked about Williams already, the phenomenal frame. Not a great athlete. He did sort of drop his stock a little bit during the combine, but he is really talented. Number 9, Justin Lane from Michigan State, and then number 10, David Long from Michigan. Both of them are talented players. Both of them had really solid combines, and definitely athletically, those two have some very nice upsides. Now on to safety, and I also think this is a very deep position, even though there's not some top talent at the draft. I think 1 through 7 could theoretically go in any order. I expect them all to be day 2 picks, maybe a couple going in the first round. My number 1 safety is Nasir Adderley from Delaware. Really like his potential. I think he has the most upside out of all these guys. He is definitely raw and has some work to do. He is very solid in coverage, extremely athletic, and is very rangy, almost like an Earl Thomas in a way. Number 2, Juan Thornhill from Virginia. Phenomenal combine. He can jump for his life. He can play corner. He can play safety. And I think he is really underrated, and I think he's a very, very good player. Number 3, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from Florida. Like Thornhill, he can play corner, he can play safety, just not quite the athlete that Thornhill is. However, Gardner is definitely more proven and probably the most proven of these safeties in this draft class. Number 4, Jonathan Abram from Mississippi State. A lot of people are more high on him. He is a solid athlete, very good run stopper. He can absolutely lay the boom. And I just don't see the upside that someone like a Nasir Adderley does. And because of that, I don't think he's as good as people think he is. And I think Jaquan Johnson is a very similar player, but just a little bit worse than Abram. Number 5, Deontay Thompson from Alabama. He was definitely going to be a high pick when it was January, but he's sort of fallen off stock-wise. He struggled towards the end of the year at Alabama, even though he was great at the beginning of the year. Number 6, Taylor Rapp from Washington. Does not have a crazy ceiling, but I don't see him being a bust. High IQ player, hard worker, sort of like his secondary teammate Byron Murphy. Number 7, Darnell Savage from Maryland. Speed, 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 baby. He had a really good year this year at Maryland, and I do think 7 was a little bit low for him. I could see myself putting him above like a Taylor Rapp or Deontay Thompson. I think 2 through 7 are all second-round projected players. I would say late second round, but I do think they all have second-round talent. Maybe some of them have early third, but I think they're all really good. Number 8, Jaquan Johnson, sort of talked about him. Hard hitter, pretty good in the run. Number 9, Lucas Dennis from Boston College. He is a very intriguing prospect to me. Really struggled this season and was not all that great. However, I really think he has a ton of upside. He has been a good player in the past for Boston College. And while this year he wasn't great, as a sophomore in 2017, he was incredible. I think that was a sophomore year. Definitely a ball hawk, really athletic, even though he was not great during the combine. And then number 10, Zedrick Woods from Ole Miss. Talented player, as he Definitely is not the flashy guy. Definitely not going to put up crazy numbers in the box score. However, I think he is a talented player, whether that's as depth or as a starting role. Talented player at Ole Miss, even though definitely not a headline type of guy. And I do think he could be a 3rd or 4th round pick and provide solid value. Now here is my top 50 big board. If you want to pause the video and just look at these names rather than me say them for you, feel free to do that. But at number 1, we have Quinnen Williams. Number 2, Ed Oliver, Nick Bosa, and Josh Allen rounding out the top 4. Those 4 are my tier 1. I think you could put those 4 in any order. I think all of them are incredible. Tempted to put Devin White in that tier 1, but I'm not quite ready to do that. After those 4, Devin White, DK Metcalf, Rashawn Gary, Juwan Taylor, Greedy Williams, and Kyler Murray rounding out the top 10. Andre Dillard, TJ Hawkinson, Jonah Williams, Montez Sweat, Cody Ford, Noah Fant, Dwayne Haskins, Byron Murphy, Christian Wilkins, and Brian Burns rounding out the top 20. 21 through 30 is Nasir Adderley, Devin Bush, Garrett Bradbury, Drew Lock, Cleveland Ferrell, A.J. Brown, DeAndre Baker, Irv Smith, Hakeem Butler, Dalton Risner, N'Keal Harry, and Dexter Lawrence. Well, that's actually 21 through 32, my bad. Then, Marquise Brown, Rocky Sin, Jalen Ferguson, Josh Jacobs, Terry McLaurin, Amani Oruwariye, Greg Little, and Jerry Tillery round out the top 40. And then 41 through 50 is Juan Thornhill, Zach Allen, Eric McCoy, Elgton Jenkins, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Jonathan Abram, Jeffrey Simmons, Tyree Jackson, Deontay Thompson, and Daniel Jones. So that is my top 50 draft board, and I guess the rest of the video is now over. Hope you all enjoyed. Likely we'll have a mock draft on Thursday. I'll have grades at the end of the draft, so make sure to stay tuned for that. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and every like does help, so make sure to hit the like button if you've not already. And as always, have a great day.